This video is going to show you how to set up a project to make an animated GIF for your project for this class. And it's going to show you how to simply use tweens and frames to create an opacity shift. First thing you want to do is open up Photoshop and set up a new document. Make sure it's set up for the web preset, and the size is a medium rectangle, 300 by 250 pixels. If you don't have the web preset, just set up a custom document for 300 by 250 pixels. Next, open up the Layers palette and either the Animations palette if you are in CS5 or below, or the Timeline palette. Both of them are available under the Window drop-down menu at the top of your screen. If you are using Timeline palette, it's going to ask you what kind of animation you want to make. You're going to say Select a Frame Animation by clicking this button down here. It should come up with that as a default. And you should see this once you click that. You should have one frame in your Timeline palette. In both the Animations and Timelines palette, make sure the Create New Layer for each new frame and New Layer Visible in all frames are unclicked. If they have check marks next to them, make sure those are unchecked. Next, set up your layers. You should have an idea of what kind of content you're going to be using in your animations, so I would first, before you start adding frames, just set up all the layers you're going to be manipulating for your project. I'm going to be adding 3 layers in this video. The first is just a background layer, which I'm going to leave white. That comes in by default. I'm going to unlock it, and then I'm going to name it BG, just so I can keep track of it, so I know it's the background. Next layer I'm going to call BG2. I'm going to add a color in there that I'm going to transition to over the course of this animation. And then I'm going to add a layer of text in, which I'll be manipulating in later videos. Now I'm going to add my background color to the layer I've named BG2. And you can see that once I add that background color to the layer, it automatically comes in the timeline window on the frame 1. So anything that's visible in the Layers palette is going to show up in the frame that is selected. I'm adding my text, giving it a color of white, and just positioning it. For this video, I'm not going to be showing the text, so I will be turning the visibility of this off so it doesn't show up in any of the frames, either the first frame that's up right now or any frames that I add in the future. And I'm going to turn off the BG2 frame, layer, so that doesn't show up. So the first frame I have is going to be white. I'm going to transition to this crimson color over a few different frames. In the second frame, I'm going to set the opacity of the second layer, BG2, to 0. So it's going to start the animation at 0 opacity, completely translucent, and it's going to progressively get more opaque. So in the third frame that I just added, I'm now setting the opacity to 50%. And in the fourth frame, I'm going to move it up to 100. So now I have 4 keyframes, which move me from a white background to a crimson background. If I were to play this, it would be quick and jumpy, so I'm going to add tweens. To add a tween, select the 2 layers you want to add tween frames to, frames between each keyframe. Go down to this icon on the bottom of the Timeline palette, those circles overlapping. It's going to come in with selection being automatically set for the tween width. Set that. Add the number of frames you want. I'm going to add 10 frames between my keyframes, and then everything else I'm going to leave checked as is. And you can see that adds 10 frames, which if you look at the Timeline palette, progressively go from white to 50% opacity on the crimson background layer. I'm going to do the same thing between my last 2 frames, which are my keyframes, from 50% to 100%. And there's my animation. It smoothly transitions from a white background to a crimson background.